Hi, my name is Betsy. I'm an artist and life coach in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm also a journal keeper. I've been keeping journals for over 20 years, and I would love to share this practice with you. So here's a book. This is one of my journals. And one of the things that I discovered after keeping several journals was that each one of these books actually covered a season of my life. When I first started this practice, I thought it was going to be actually an art practice. I thought that I was going to be returning to the sketchbooks of my college days. Back then, I kept journals with words, and then I was studying art, so I had sketchbooks filled with ideas and magazine collages and paintings and, my work from my art studies. One day I was in a bookstore and I had an epiphany. I encountered this book called The Decorated Page. I don't know why it had never occurred to me to marry text and image, but up until that point they were really different for me. My journals with words were about feelings and emotions and diary keeping, and my sketchbooks were art-focused and for working out ideation for paintings and working on my drawing skills. They were two separate things. I encountered this beautiful book standing in a bookstore, and my perspective completely shifted. I saw an entirely new art form of image and text together, and how it could be used not just for preparing a painting, but for documenting a beautifully lived life. At the time, I was running an art studio, teaching children from age 5 all the way through high school the basics of art: color theory, drawing, design and composition. Was immersed in the world of art, but I wasn't actually living my own art story, and I had put journals and art supplies on the shelf. That book inspired me. That book inspired me to dive back into my own story. So I went home and I pulled down supplies, old supplies. Half of them I had to throw away because they were old, because I'd abandoned the practice for so long. So I spent the next couple of years exploring and decorating pages. I think this is a good place to talk about the fact that I'm a failed scrapbooker. So I had a lot of really beautiful paper and supplies that were supposed to be going toward documenting my life in photographs, but I just hadn't really connected with that art form. I just returned to my roots. I started sketching and I started writing words down, and I started marrying the two. Another huge piece of this was that I was mothering 5 children at the time, and I didn't really have a space of my own. So this practice involved a Tupperware container with a few art supplies and staying up into the wee hours of the night trying to figure out what I was doing. I also ran headlong into my own perfectionism and what I wanted these pages to look like. This was the early years of the internet. We had one home computer, and I had started getting online and looking to see what other people were doing. Enter comparison stage left. Man, it just about took me out. Like, other people were making these beautiful, beautiful pages, and I just couldn't reconcile my learning process with this beautiful documentation that I was trying to create. So I just wrestled. I wrestled in the pages. I wrestled with perfectionism. I wrestled with comparison. I wrestled with my rusty drawing skills. I was actually experiencing all of the same contradictions and challenges that my students were experiencing. Every time I had a 5-year-old stare at a white page and not know what to do, every time I had a high schooler erase holes in the paper, I was helping them navigate through their own challenges, the challenges that we all encounter when we're creating and making and actually, at the end of the day, spilling our soul out onto a page. So I'm helping all of these students navigate that, and I had to learn ultimately how to help myself navigate those very same challenges and those very same paths and barriers that exist on the path to our full authentic expression. What started out as, I'm gonna create this beautiful book and I'm gonna document my life in an exquisite way, I'm gonna make this product, actually became this really beautiful process. It became capturing my story. It became revelation about who I am and how I walk in the world. It became way more than an end product. It became the wrestling of my soul for a season. That's what we call soul work. When I'm talking about soul work, I'm talking about my internal spaces. I'm talking about my emotions and my awareness of self and how I manage self. And all of that goes into a package for me of soul work. There are 3 major components. There's emotional intelligence, there's emotional agility, and there's self-awareness. They all are very interconnected, and I'll be kind of filleting those out in different ways as we move through some of the exercises, but I'll always kind of come back to those 3 core principles and those 3 definitions. So let's talk about those definitions a little bit. Emotional intelligence is actually the overarching term. Emotional intelligence has 2 categories. One is the category of self, and one is the category of our relationship with others. The bulk of what we're going to be talking about in this course is sinking into the aspects of emotional intelligence that center around self-awareness and self-management or emotional agility. So emotional intelligence is actually an alternative form of intelligence. It's a place where we can be really savvy aside from recognition or awareness of a body of knowledge. A huge component of that is self-awareness. So self-awareness is exactly what it sounds like. It is awareness of self. And here's the deal, it's hard. It's hard to be aware of your internal spaces. Means that you have to slow down to the speed of listening. And there's not a whole lot about our current culture or the way that we move in the world that makes space for that. One of the reasons that this practice marries so beautifully with self-awareness is that if you're slowing down to pick some images, if you're slowing down to pay attention to what your intuition is saying, if you're slowing down to write down the words that are happening from the inside out, then you are engaging in self-awareness. It's the first piece, is the awareness. So the second component of emotional intelligence is actually agility. It is concerned with movement and management of your emotions and yourself. So as it's married to this practice, you are collecting, observing, reflecting, and then you can move into life practices that are transformational, and you can begin to enter the alchemy that occurs when you're using all of the accurate components of how you feel and what you're aware of, and then you begin to move and shift and transform into your life path. It's one thing to be aware of your emotions. It's a completely other skill to know how to move and manage that same emotion. What this practice does is it gives you the tools that you need to come into awareness and to be able to master the emotions and the information that surface.